Good morning, members. We have already formed a quorum. It is also time to start the meeting. First of all, let's confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February 2014. The Secretariat hasn't received any proposed amendments. Can we confirm the minutes? Thank you. Since the last meeting, we've received 3 information papers. The details are set out in the agenda. On the 18th of January, we are going to have a regular meeting. As to the proposed items for discussion, we have the following. That is the unlawful hiring or the carrying of passengers for payment by light goods vehicles. The second one is about the report on dealing with drunk driving and drug driving. No questions. Then we'll deal with the 2 items on the 18th of July, 10:45 a.m. Without further ado, we then go to the 3rd item on the 4th item on the agenda. That is about the MTR fare adjustment for 2014. Administration's team be invited, please. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome Mr. Andy Chen, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mr. Jose Yam, PAS for Transport and Housing, Ms. Marcella Lee, Assistant Commissioner, Transport Department. From the MTRCR, we have Ms. Jenny Yeung, Commercial Director, Mr. Eddie So, General Manager, and Ms. May Wong, General Manager, Corporate Relations. Welcome. First of all, I think our Deputy Secretary will give a briefing, right? Mr. Chen. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. So the paper is about the details about the fare adjustment for the MTR under the fare adjustment mechanism. There will also be a briefing on the fare promotions. The MTRCL colleagues will give you the details. I just want to make a few points. First of all, we have the MTR City Saver. The second is about the early bird discount promotion trial program. Early this month, the MTR City Saver was introduced. This is the outcome of the review of the fare adjustment mechanism carried out last year. This is to supplement the urban area not yet covered by the monthly pass arrangements, so that the medium and long distance frequent MTR travelers can enjoy a greater concession. For East Rail, West Rail, and Tong lines, we have the monthly pass extra. It has already been launched, and together with the MTR City Saver, it means that for the medium and long distance frequent MTR travelers throughout the network, they will enjoy fare promotions to a greater extent. As to the early bird discount promotion trial program, it will be launched in September this year. The purpose is to ease the problem of having relatively more passengers during the morning peak hours. This will be carried out for 9 months, and then there will be an evaluation afterwards. I would like to defer to Ms. Yeung, the Commercial Director of the MTRCL, to walk us through the details. Ms. Young, please. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. I think you recall that last year, the MTRCL carried out a review of the fare adjustment mechanism. One of the outcomes was that the productivity factor would be enlarged. Instead of 0.1%, it was revised to 0.6%. As a result, the overall fare adjustment rates will be decreased by 0.5 percentage points in terms of the fare increase for the years from 2013 to 2017. For 2014, for the overall fare adjustment rate, it will be 3.6%. This is the weighted average. That is the weighted average adjustment of all controlled fares of individual trips combined must equal. And on the 29th of this month, we are going to implement the new fares. And then after last year's fare adjustment mechanism review, we have got two new arrangements. First of all, well, we have the 10% same-day second trip discount, and we have the project sharing mechanism. As a result, we are able to share the profits with the passengers. As to the fund to be set aside, it depends on the profit for that year, and in accordance with a table implementing the formula, there will be a certain sum of money. Last year, we have $860 million by way of profits, and therefore $125 million will set aside for this purpose for the benefit of the passengers. The second arrangement is the service performance arrangement. That is, if we have a disruption, then measuring over 31 minutes, then we will set aside the sum of money. And for this purpose, we have $27.5 million. Altogether, $152.5 million will be returned back to the passengers under the 10% same-day second trip discount, and it will last for 3.5 years. And then for this year, there will be more concessions as announced earlier. I would like to walk you through the details. This year marks the 35th anniversary of our service provided to the passengers. We would like to provide something extra. That is, we are going to enhance the 10% same-day discount. Same-day second trip discount, and we are going to add 6.5 months more. In other words, between the 29th of June and this year and the 30th of April next year, for 10 months, there will be this 10% same-day second trip discount. For the MTR City Saver, we have already launched the scheme. It started sale on the 8th of June, and initially we can see that it is quite popular. For the first 2 weeks, we have already sold almost 50,000 such tickets. In terms of the volume, I think it has already exceeded the most popular one, that is Lam Cheung Tun Mun, and monthly speaking, they have 45,000. In the light of the commuters' feedback, we have carried out a survey. At the stations, we interviewed 400 commuters. 79% of them told us that they were aware of the City Saver, among whom 1/4 of them had actually purchased the City Saver. When asked for the reason, 98% of them told us that they thought they could make some savings. 89% of them told us that the City Saver could meet their needs. Earlier on, as I have already said, this City Saver is a smart ticket sold for $400 each, and then for the for 30 days within the first use, then you can take 40 trips, and then you can use the tickets, including those stations not yet covered by the current concessions, that is the stations marked yellow on the map. You are not restricted to using it in a particular month, and you don't need to buy the ticket in the early days of a particular month. You can just get it and then you can use it for 30 days. And you can see that we are still selling it for $400 despite the enhanced fare rates after the adjustment, so it will be even more attractive. After the fare adjustment, on average, you can save between 10 to 24% for the city trips. It will be most attractive for those commuting across the harbor. Now let's take an example. This is quite a classic case. Many people go to office in Admiralty from Kwan. With the new fare rates, the octopus card price will be $13.2, and then with the City Saver, you save 24% because you only pay $10. And then we may want to cite another example as a medium distance trip from Taikushing to Kowloon Bay. For the new fare under the octopus system, $11.1, and then by using the City Saver, you pay $10, so a 10% discount. Probably you have already noticed the advertisements on newspapers as well as the stations. Starting from July, at 10 stations, there will be special counters at our stations to introduce the City Saver to the commuters, so the commuters know more about the features, and for those who have already bought the City Saver, they know how to make better use of it. And then we have also announced earlier that in order to address the relatively high train loading situation during the morning peak period, other than engaging more platform assistance and having new queuing up arrangements on the platforms so as to make the operation smoother, we have also echoed the administration's suggestions in our discussion. Namely, we are introducing the early bird discount promotion trial program between Monday and Friday, between 7:15 and 8:15 a.m. If you exit at the 29 core urban stations, then you get a 25% off. You may want to know why we have picked those stations. This is because, according to our information, over 80% of the commuters will be exiting at the 29 chosen stations. For us to focus our resources to provide attractive concessions so as to be effective in encouraging early birds, we can then have them avoiding the morning peak. This program will be launched on the 1st of September this year, lasting for 9 months up till the 31st of May next year. For those using monthly pass extra, the early bird discount promotion will also apply. In other words, other than taking the specified trips for which they already enjoy 25% off, with the early bird discount, they are going to have further 25% off. In other words, there will be discount on discount. In other words, the total discount would be that they pay 56% of the original fare. So in the case of a commuter starting in Tuen Mun, taking a trip to Tsim Sha Tsui or Tsim Sha Tsui East, and then he goes to Taikushing. And then instead of paying $13.2 under the monthly pass extra, he has $3.30 taken off, and then with the early bird discount, another $2.50 off. In other words, a total savings of $5.8. Upon completion of the trial scheme, we are going to look at the effectiveness to see whether we can encourage more commuters to take the trips early, and then we will decide on the way forward. For the new fare programs as well as the new fare attractions, including the 10% same-day second trip discount, City Saver, and the early bird discount promotion, I think the total amount of money incurred in terms of fare savings will be $500 million. We'll continue to have further concessions for the commuters.
The regular fare concessions total more than $2 billion. More than 3 million people benefit from it each day. So a number of members have asked to speak. Let me read out their names. Kokaki, Wang Ko-hing, Tan Ka-piu, Van Ko-wei, Christopher Chung, Pun Siu-ki, Che Wei-chun, and Wu Chi-wai. Okay, each will have 4 minutes. Kokaki. Chairman, I think we're very disappointed with the performance of MTRC. And with its bad performance, and with revenue of $13.2 billion, and yet it's going to increase fares, I think it's the responsibility of the government, which owns 70% of the shares. Earlier you mentioned that we heard that there needs to be a new mechanism to control or to link the performance of management to adjustments. You know, the $500 million savings actually are made at the expense of passengers. Of the MTR business, actually up to $8.6 billion related to its core businesses. The land owned by MTRC is like offered free to it by the government. And yet, MTR performance is so bad. There have been various incidents, slippage of journeys or other incidents. And yet, the government allows it to charge higher fares. I'm sure MTR will be able to come up with its own excuses. But when the government will review the fare adjustment mechanism? It seems like the adjustment mechanism is one under which fares will only increase but not decrease. No matter how disappointed passengers are with the services, the company will continue to increase fares. This year, the government received dividends of more than close to $4 billion. We've said it many times. All these revenues are gained from the public, and the money should actually be returned to the public to stabilize the fares. But the government has kept saying that it couldn't do it. For the I think the government has failed to play a monitoring role in the management or in the board of the MTRC, allowing senior management to get heavy payouts. And of the government also refused to come up with a stabilization fund despite the huge revenue. And also the government has yet to agree to review the remunerations, the mechanism for remunerations for senior management of the company. I think the performances should be taken into account of in the offering of remunerations. I expect the government or the administration to respond. Deputy Secretary, Mr. Kwok has made several queries. The entire fare adjustment mechanism was reviewed last year on the basis of a mutual agreement between the government and the corporation. Every 5 years, there's supposed to be a review. Therefore, the government will monitor and see how the company performs, and at an appropriate time, it will reflect. So, in other words, it's saying that you will not carry out another review, despite the bad performance of the company. As for the second question about the stabilization fund, you all know that the government's public transportation policy, it won that that's based on private operating or private operations of transportation services to ensure quality and efficiency. If there's to be any change, the entire sector could be affected. Next one, Wong Kwa Hing. MTRC has a large amount of surplus. Every year it had got surpluses, and yet it's going to increase its fares. I think to me this is unreasonable. Even though the corporation is offering concessions, but I think it should freeze fare increase instead. Its concessionary policies now actually have some drawbacks. For example, the so-called City Saver, even though it sold close to 50 tickets, out of its total passengers each day of $4 million, it makes up only about a little more than 1% of the total passengers every day. So you can see that the City Saver actually lacked publicity, and the public didn't know much about it. Every day I took the MTR many times, but I didn't notice any obvious publicity for this scheme, and I can't see the benefits of buying City Saver. And also the promotions that you're going to launch only apply to the morning peak periods. Why don't you consider offering the same concessions in the peak period in the evening? You know, in the evening, the trains are very congested as well. So would you consider offering the same promotion in the evening peak hour? And also, for people who work 6 days a week, they can only be entitled to the promotions 5 days a week. That's not enough. Why wouldn't you consider increasing, offering the promotions on Saturdays as well? So these are the various drawbacks. I hope that the administration and MTRC would respond to it. And as for 10 cents charge for the platform screen doors, I got some response to my earlier query, but I do hope that you can explain more clearly your charge of 10. How do you come to 10 cents charged for the platform screen doors? MTRC? Okay, Ms. Yang. I tried to answer the first few questions. As for the platform screen doors, I'll ask my colleague Mr. So to respond. And back to the MTR City Saver. The 50,000 tickets sold so far compared to the most popular ticket, the Tuen Nam Chong Monthly Pass Extra, it actually surpassed that popular concession in terms of tickets sold. We meet the needs of various passenger groups. We also have, therefore, other products to serve their needs, including the discounts for return journeys. We calculated up to 3.3 million passenger trips benefit from our concessions every day. That makes up 60% of the users, total users. I hope they can look at it from another perspective. As for the promotions during the morning peak hour, I heard Mr. Wong's question. I think at the end of the promotional trial scheme, we'll see whether the promotions help ease the congestions on the trains. But why didn't we take into account the evening peak hours? It's because in the morning hours, it's easier for us to, based on data collected, offer promotions at certain stations. And we can really identify the busiest stations for the morning peak period. But of course, we'll review the arrangement later. And as for publicity for City Saver, we've heard similar views, and we will actually carry out further publicity work at various stations. How about Saturdays? Promotions on Saturdays? Well, please wait for the second round. Tang Kapiu next. I think the public is most satisfied that your books look so good. How come which corporation can make up to $10 billion a year and yet can continue to increase fares? Like buses, which ask for a fare increase, would give the reason for, like, if they don't increase fares, then they would not have the money to support the operations. And yet now you're asking for increases, even with the huge revenue. And also, when MTLC was listed in 2000 and up to its merger, it only increased fares for 8 times, once. And yet, under the mutual agreement with the government, it's entitled to increase fares every year. I couldn't understand that. So in the recent years, it has increased fares every year. Why is it that the situation seems to have gone worse? In the first year of its merger, it made $8 billion in profit. Can there be a base? That is, if the profit, should a profit reach a certain level, then it should not be allowed to raise fares? I think that's, a reasonable level of profit. And would you incorporate this thinking? The administration? And if the administration thinks that you need to have a talk with MTLC and want to have a review earlier than scheduled, then can the administration just call the board to a meeting instead of having to call a general meeting of shareholders? Mr. Chen. Yes, before the merger, the company increased fares once, and after the merger, it seemed to have increased fares more. But this is due to the economic situation. The mechanism is based on the overall economic situation. If there's deflation, fares will drop. You can remember from 2000 to mid-2000s, there were the SARS, and the economic situation here was on the decline. As for the fare adjustment mechanism and its review, whether we incorporate other thinking, in the past 2 years, well, indeed, this is the second year we've carried after we've carried a review, and we will continue to analyze views collected from the public and see how we can make the mechanism better. In the past, we never dealt with the issue of profits made by MTLC. And the last review, we for the first time took into account its profit. And this is also the first time we're offering promotions and concessionary fares to frequent passengers. So we've taken steps forward indeed. So you think you came up with a reasonable answer? You're saying that because of economic situation, then fare increases are justified, even though the company made a lot of profits. And you think that you think the review has dealt with the issue already? I don't think the public will be satisfied with your answer. So you're saying that you will not activate the mechanism to review earlier than scheduled? Mr. Chen, as I said, the whole mechanism is based on a contract. So is it that compared to the days when MTLC was first listed, the government is unlikely to interfere? Well, MTLC's fare increase did not require approval from the Executive Council. Next one. I'd like to ask you, why is MTLC entitled to raise fares? Service is poor and you made a lot of profit. All the promotions you just mentioned actually are just inflated. I think the government is just, through the fare adjustment mechanism, letting the MTLC to engage in sort of reasonable exploitation. You're not entitled to any fare increases at all. Just then you told Letchko about your delay in construction of the high-speed rail, and now you came to us with some sorts of promotions as excuses for a salary earner who have to make 42 trips a month. You expect them to make at least 40 trips to be eligible for your promotions. For the morning promotions, as you said, Ms. Young, you said at the press conference, overseas, like in the experience of Singapore, even deducting $3 in fares that only amounts to about a few % of passengers who would use the promotion. So it's of limited effect indeed.
晨早嘅優惠。
Do you have any plans to enhance the city saver as well as the early bird discount scheme? And for the city saver, is it possible to introduce a ticket of a smaller value instead of 400? I think you are hiding behind the arrangement that you have a review once every 5 years. I don't think the administration is actually monitoring the performance of the MTRC adequately. Mr. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Fan, for your question. For the City Saver, it is something new. We are duty-bound to further promote it. It is in a monthly pass. You can regard it as a booklet of many $10 tickets. You can immediately proceed to another booklet of tickets. So if somebody is making a ride of a value more than $10, then he is immediately getting a concession, so it can be up to 24%. You have to think about the details and make all the calculations before you can make some savings. You are not entitled to a fare increase. Every commuter is criticizing you, scolding you. Mr. Fan, let her give a reply first before you rebut. Officials and other department representatives or officials are giving a reply. Please don't interrupt. Chair, you are using my time. Sorry, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the early bird. For the early bird discount, you cited the example of Singapore. By providing a discount, yes, some commuters may be attracted to the incentive, but of course we understand that the effectiveness will be restricted. For the morning, for the peak hours, we're limited in the number of additional trains that we can deploy. You have to wait until 2018, right? There are platform assistance. Can you not boost the concession? We've just launched it as a 25% off. We've been told that it is quite attractive. Mr. Poon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what some members have said in relation to the unjustified fare increase on the part of the MTR. If I may clarify the details about certain concession schemes that you're launching. For the City Saver, it is said that you have sold 49,000. But I don't think that it is as attractive or as popular as you have made out to be. What actually is the concession for a trip from Fulton to the Admiralty? The commuters don't get any concession at all. Is it true? And then for the early bird discount, of course, you have said that between Monday and Friday, between 7:15 and 8:15, then you can enjoy some savings. Of course, if someone can advance his trip so as to avoid the congestion, then you can get the savings. Why can't you just make it before 8:15 so that it's simpler? Now, if you also provide savings for trips made after 8:50, then again it will be attractive. You said that you would like to make a decision after the trial scheme, but won't you introduce improvements upon receiving suggestions from us, and then we can ease the congestion. We can also provide concessions. Mr. For the case in Fulton, yes, indeed, it's not covered by the MTR City Saver, but then you do have the East Rail monthly passes. In other words, such commuters may also be covered, so they can choose to use the East Rail monthly pass. For the early bird discount, if we are to advance it further, I'm afraid that it won't help much in relation to the traveling pattern. Now, it's easier to advance it by 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Anything earlier may not provide a very strong incentive, and that's why we haven't simply extended it in that way, because it will have a cost implication. We have to strike a balance where when we try to put up some resources, we will try to see how much concession we can provide, and we want to be more focused so as to ease the heavy train load during the peak hours in the morning for particular stations. For the evening, it's different. In the morning, we understand fully which sections of the network are more crowded. But we're still having open mind, and we will make adjustments in the light of the feedback. For the City Saver, I want to know what is our target sales volume. It's something very new. We did make some assessments. We hope that for the first few months we're able to sell 70,000 per month. Now, for the first 2 weeks, we sold 50,000 City Saver tickets. I think it is in line with our projection. I think once people get used to the operational details of the ticket, then it will become more attractive. Christopher Chong. In the past, the MTRCL did freeze the fares and did not increase the fares. Now, with this it doesn't mean that you must increase it or you must decrease it. It merely provides a way to calculate the fare adjustment rates for increases and decreases. Recently, the MTRCL performed so poorly. There are so many incidents. There have been so many incidents. There have been so many project slippages. You shouldn't increase the fares. In 0809, you didn't increase the fares. So I think is it the government's responsibility? The government is the majority shareholder. If you don't agree to a fare increase, then MTRCL can't. So can you do something on the board of directors? Can you do something to freeze the fare adjustments? Mr. Chen, for the fare adjustment mechanism, it is a direct drive formula. So parties to the agreement, that is the government and the MTRCL, have the duty to enforce the contract and implement the outcome of the direct drive of the formula. The operational details are the duty of the MTRCL. In the past, there wasn't a fare increase. That's because at the time of the rail merger, that was part of the package. So at that time, it was promised that for the first 3 years, there wouldn't be a fare increase. So I think the administration has the duty to freeze the fares in the light of the poor performance. You say you haven't got the mechanism, but what about the directors on the board? Don't you think that you have a duty to push for a fare freeze? The administration has been following the mechanism. At the same time, we encourage the MTRCL while observing the duty to have prudent financial management as a listed company. The MTRCL should be encouraged to take into account the interests of the public. In what way? Not under the mechanism. Not under mechanism. Christopher, let him finish his reply first. When you have time left, then you can reject his argument. You encouraged, but did you encourage them this time? You talked about a few years ago. How? We did, and how? On the board, we have a number of public officers, we always remind the MTRCO to bear in mind the public affordability. But of course, it's a listed company. You have always been saying that you always do so. But then at which meeting held on which date, we always say this. What did you say? They performed so poorly. But they're still increasing the fares. We always remind MTRCO of the financial prudence as well as the affordability of the commuting public. So we ask them to try to bear those 2 points in mind. It's a listed company, they know it, so it doesn't require the government to remind the MTRCO. The MTRCO should be reminded that they shouldn't be given any rewards for the mistakes committed. Mr. Tong, I don't think the public would welcome a fare increase, in particular in the light of the profits made. Now, the government has always said that the railway will become the backbone of our transport system. So the public would not welcome any fare increase. But I just wonder if we can get more concessions for the early bird discount. Of course, you want to give savings to enable the public to have savings. By having a higher patronage, you will have more revenue by way of fare income. So for the early bird discount promotion, I have already told my colleagues that is, why can't you extend the period of time covered instead of just confining it to 1 hour? I don't think you will suffer any loss. So what about the period of time after the morning peak? I think some companies can come up with a flexible working hours system. Not everybody has to go to work so early. And 29 stations. Don't be so mean, and 29 stations means we can only cover 80% of the commuters. Mr. Chairman, for the long-distance travelers, well, the MTRCO would like to have more commuters per train, so there are fewer seats, and then it is more difficult for the long-distance travelers. So why can't you give more concessions? For someone coming out from Yuen Long, they now pay $26.3 instead of $25.3, so an increase of $1. Then in paragraph 25, it is said that the fare savings amount to $500 million to passengers. So that's for the passengers. But what about the additional fare income as a result? Monsieur, let me answer the last question first. The figure of $500 million. I want to know whether you are getting more revenue income. It depends on whether we're able to attract more commuters. For the same day second trip discount, we are not attracting new customers. So the major part of the $500 million refer to the concessions given to the same day second trip concessions. So does it mean that you haven't got more commuters? So you haven't got additional income? I don't think we're able to cover more commuters because they are the second trip travelers. So they are getting the savings from us. For the early bird discount, it's too immature to comment on it. As to why we can't provide more concessions, have a higher discount rate and cover more stations, we have to strike a balance between expenditure and revenue. If we attract more commuters from other modes of transport, then it can't ease the congestion problem. So we just want the commuters to take out their trips earlier.
Which way? MTRC make a lot of profits each year, and the major beneficiary is the SA government, receiving dividends of more than 3 billion. And the government says they can interfere too much with it because it's a listed company. But if the government agrees that the transportation expenses are a heavy burden for particularly grassroots people, the government can, for example, forfeit part of its dividends in exchange for a fare freeze. That can be done. And this can also ensure the protection of shareholders, minority shareholders' interests. You can say, well, this is public money and you want to get approval from the LegCo, but why have you not asked LegCo members whether they agree with the current policy? It seems like now you only try to protect the interests of shareholders without considering the affordability of the public. So has the government considered forfeiting part of its dividends and use those forfeited dividends as sort of a reason for a fare freeze instead? We have seen that MTRC's increases tend to lead to increases in other modes of transportation. You can see that is the major competitors' fares have reached to a certain level. For example, our red public light bus follows the MTRC's increase closely. If you increase $1, they also increase the fare by $1. And has the government considered trying to suppress the overall transportation costs? Thank you. The government look at public transportation as a whole. If it thinks that there needs to be some sort of subsidy policy, it will discuss it with LegCo, for example, for ferries. Chairman, I just want to ask whether the government or MTRC has... I heard what you said already about ships. I need to tell you the overall picture first. You know, the government's overall public transportation policy. Otherwise, you wouldn't understand why we approached MTRC this way. We do hope to maintain commercial operations of public transportation so that it can be efficient and have certain of high quality. For individual transport operators, you know, if there's any scenario where the public has no choices for transportation, then the government will intervene. But the government would not introduce a subsidy policy easily. As for how can we introduce a subsidy, that's a kind of technical issue, whether we should subsidize from the treasury. In other words, we not come back to discuss the issue with us, Chairman. I'd like to you're talking, well, the government does not need to deal with the technical aspect of the issue first, and we also do not implement a subsidies policy for public transportation. Chairman, in other words, the government would not consider discussing with LegCo members its overall public transportation policy, whether it should be people-centered, it should be based on the affordability of the public. I'm very disappointed with your response. And also, I think MTRC's concession, I don't understand why its core stations do not include the factory areas in Kwan and Tong. I want a response from MTRC. Next one. Well, I think that MTRC is really calculating. And it's like a miser to be as well. The morning discounts that cover 29 core stations, you can see that many of the companies have moved to Kwan or Tong already. Maybe because of Occupy Central, some companies have already set up backup officers in Chunwan. So the morning discounts actually can be applied to all routes, all stations. Because it's for the period from 7:50 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. You don't really need to care how long the journey is. I think only then, if you don't limit the urban station, then that would be of real use to people. If you only cover Meifu and not Liking, do you want me to walk from Meifu to Liking instead? Can you expand the discount promotion scheme to cover all stations across Hong Kong? That is for anyone traveling from 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. They can be given the discounts wherever they go. And also, can you launch the promotions earlier before September 1st? Maybe you want to think that during the summer there may not be that many people on the train during the summer holiday, but indeed trains are congested still. And also, can you launch evening concessions so that people who are going home from work or who finish work later in the evening, can enjoy the discount and don't have to ride on congested trains? Miss Yang? For the 29 core stations, why do we not cover Chunwan or other stations? Let me reiterate, the purpose of this policy is to ease the congestion during the peak periods. You said that, there may be other stations that are not covered and where passengers may use them in non-peak period. But our purpose is to ease the congestion on the trains. We really want to target, those congested areas. As I said, if we just launch another sort of concession for another group of people, that will add to our financial burden, and we can also and that will also lead to a reduction in the discounts for the particular group currently being targeted. And from September 1st, while we are introducing the concessions then, because we think the summer holiday is quieter and September 1st will be when people or children return to school. And we also need time to prepare for the changes. And as for the evening concessions, as I tried to explain earlier, so far we want to focus on tackling the congestion in the morning, because the morning congestion is more serious. That's why we've launched the morning peak hour concessions first, but we'll see what the response is like. And as members mentioned, we don't want to carry out a promotion and then attract more people to come to our trains and make the congestion even worse. So we need to look at the outcome first before we carry out a review. Michael Tian. Chairman, I can see that members are concerned about two issues. One is the fare adjustment mechanism, whether it should be linked to profit, and secondly is the details of the concessions. And on the first topic, at the time of the merger, is stated very clearly that there will be this mechanism. I think, I would not object to discussing the mechanism further, but you need to persuade the hundreds of thousands of shareholders to see where they agree to make amendments to the fare adjustment mechanism. But if they don't agree, then the administration's only option is to buy back MTRC to make it like the KCLC before. There have been such suggestions lately. But then the implication is then next step, should you nationalize all other public transportation? Is that what you want to do? I think that's something that we should discuss and look into. And as for the concessions, I think we need to give them time. I thank you for continuing with the good traditions of KCLC. You have the Referral and Tong Namchong monthly pass. But why don't you provide a monthly pass instead for urban riders? You're saying that you're worried about congestions, but why monthly passes for West Wales travelers? Why don't you just give people monthly passes? That as simple as that. You don't have to give or launch various kinds of concessions. I'd also like you to promise that your morning peak period concessions from January to April can include concessions from 5 to 6 p.m. You can compare the responses in September to October and January to April and see whether there can be, what impacts that can have. I've talked to many owners. Many owners have told us that the existing promotion would not encourage their staff to go to work earlier. But if you change or if you introduce the late afternoon concessions, then that could actually encourage people to change their working hours. If you introduce the late afternoon concessions, we can walk on both feet. With the late afternoon concessions, we may even encourage people to take the morning peak rise, more of them to do so. I think for the morning concessions and the late afternoon concessions, I think from 6 p.m., I'm talking about 5 to 6 p.m. When people enter the gates at 5 to 6 p.m., do a 4-month trial period. And September to December, you try the morning concession scheme, and then next year, January to April, you carry out the pilot study of giving concessions 5 to 6 p.m. and see what the situation is like. Yeah, I think many officers told me that only late afternoon concessions can help them encourage different working hours. Well, as for monthly pass, I think the 54 stations covered currently are very congested already. If we allow people to have an unlimited rise monthly passes, and that could make congestions even worse. And why don't you give us a fixed price, carry out an opinion poll? You can see what the public thinks. Next one, Chairman Yip. Chairman, all these concessions actually are there to fool people. During the peak period, the trains are so crowded. Actually, it's beyond what the MTRC can afford. There are just far too many people on trains during peak period. So your so-called concessions would only try to encourage people who cannot get on the trains now to go and get on board the train earlier. So in other words, you are actually increasing your income by introducing the morning concessions, because during the peak hours, there's no room for other passengers. And those passengers will be forced to take the early morning rise, which offer them these concessions. And some other people will be forced to take other modes of public transportation. So your calculation is that you are subsidizing, you said you're subsidizing $2 billion. But indeed, this is definitely a distortion and misleading. If you really want to benefit the public, then you need to see who are the most vulnerable financially and who need subsidy the most. But now, you only look at the MTRC is only looking at its own operations. And when this period is congested, you want to attract people, the surplus passengers, to take the rides at an earlier time. Then you introduce the concessions. So you are just trying to increase your revenues only. So concessions are actually a kind of, you're cheating us by saying that they are concessions. You need to go to the areas where people can least afford the fares or have fewer choices of public transportation. Then you should give them concessions to ease their financial burden. That's how you help or reduce people's financial burden.
你可唔可以考慮？
But you aren't really doing that. For the elderly, yes, you have taken the administration's advice, and the trip is $2 each. I think the MTRCL should follow the example of other transport operators. For monthly passes, well, the office workers have to go to work every day. And in fact, the MTRCL is to be blamed for making travel expenses accounting for a larger and larger share of our expenditure. Even if you put up $2 billion, who's going to benefit from your concession, I think you have to look at their actual needs. Would you do so, Ms. Zhang? Mr. Chen has stated many points. In fact, a lot of them have already been considered by us. Say, for example, targeting at the needy commuters. We have the West Rail, East Rail, and Tong line monthly passes. Such are more remote areas. For monthly passes, it is selective. So again, you are fooling people because it is not comprehensive. And then for the student fare concession, we are the only transport operator offering the concession out of our own pockets. So for many needy families, this should be regarded as a concession. As I have emphasized, different fare promotions target at different commuter groups, and that explains the differences and special features. But then you are fooling us. It is a matter of shortchanging us. Mr. Michael Tian talked about nationalizing the public transport service. I think we shouldn't deal with that question today. Now, I think $500 million will be the fare savings. I don't think you should affect the interests of the small shareholders, because after all, you are a listed company. Now, a question for the administration. Can you not get some money from the dividend that you share and put it into an account? Now, the MTRCL can make so much money because to a certain extent it is using some public resources, namely land. So for the additional income for the government, I think the government should put it aside to serve the interests of the public. Say, for example, for the early bird discount. Many grassroots jobs have to have a very early starting point. Say, for example, many people have to take their first trip, the first service. So such commuters may not be able to benefit from your early bird discount because the earliest would still be 7:15. So please dip into the pocket of the government to subsidize the fares for this group instead of hurting the interests of the minority. And then I hope that you don't just provide a discount to a second trip in the same day. I think your purpose is to attract people to make greater use of the service, but I cannot benefit from your second trip. It's difficult to control when you go off work or when you return home, because you may have overtime or you may have other functions to go to. On the question of the second trip on the same day, well, our information shows that many commuters are enjoying this concession. Of course, we cannot cover all the commuters. For the concessions, we'll continue to improve them in the light of the different needs of the commuters. As to what more we can do to deal with different income groups. As I have said, there are already many different kinds of fare promotions, but we'll still have an open mind to see what suggestions you can give us. Well, I think the government can channel some money to set up a special fund so as to do more under the fare promotions instead of getting the money back to the general revenue. Deputy Secretary, you heard our views. I think all members have spoken. I will just make a few simple points. Now, for the 29 stations covered by your early bird discount, I think members have made a valid point. Mainly speaking, we hope those who usually arrive their destination station at about 8 o'clock, you encourage them to make their trips earlier. But I'm afraid some of the popular stations are not being covered, like Wan, Kowloon Bay, Diamond Hill, Kwan, Tong. They are all very busy stations, so if they are also included, then it means that you're being fair to the passengers. I think Michael Tian has also made a suggestion that for employers to encourage flexi working hours other than 9 to 5, can you not facilitate a work pattern of 8 to 4? So that it will be more attractive to the commuters, that is by providing a discount for the evening trips as well. 6 members would like to ask questions for the second time, but then we have got a second item for discussion as well. I'm sure it is also of great interest to members. That's about the franchises of 2 bus companies. So I'll give you 1 minute each to ask supplementary question. Wong Kok Heng, KK Kwok, Tang Kap Piu, Wu Chi Wai, Michael Tian, and Gary Fan. 1 minute each. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of an ordinary citizen, I would like to ask the MTRCL why the screen door 10-cent surcharge has not yet been sort of plowed back to the passengers. Mr. So, on the 1st of December last year, as far as the octopus fares are concerned, 10 cents have already been taken out. Altogether, we received $1.1 billion. Is $20 million short of the expected income. After taking out the 10 cents, some citizens asked whether we should have included the impact of previous fare adjustments. We took a good look of it, and we found that it's a matter of a difference of 0.45 cents. The amount is too small. It cannot be taken out from the octopus fares. So we take the opportunity of the current FAM adjustment. You mean it has already been accounted for? Yes. Dr. K.K. Kwok, just now I didn't have time to allow the Deputy Secretary to answer my question. Now my question is, the dividend won't affect the profitability of a company. The stabilization fund, and are you going to call a general meeting so as to penalize the senior management? Mr. Chen, as to the service performance and its impact on the bonus given to the senior management, you did reflect your views to us a few meetings back. We already referred the matter to the board of directors, and they have also agreed that when they decide on the bonus payment to the senior management, they would take into account the previous performance. So it has already been implemented. We have already given a reply when questions were asked at the electrical meeting. And once we have the implementation details, we'll report to you. What about the fare stabilization fund? It isn't a matter just for the MTRCL. It's a broader issue for all public transport operators. It is difficult to give an answer right now. The the government hasn't got the policy decision to launch such a stabilization fund. Bill, middle of last year, there was a comparison among the fare concessions provided in different districts. For London and Berlin, I think they have something more flexible, applicable to the entire city. But for us, we are sort of using the service lines instead of the city as a whole. So what is our answer to our request to have a citywide concession? Mr. Yes, this has been suggested many times. Now, for a monthly pass to have a single rate, it will not be too attractive. If it is to be attractive, then there will be an impact. Some will go from Tuen Mun to Tsim Sha Tsui East, and others may just go to Wan Chai. So if you have something across the board, it won't be attractive as well as affordable to the MTRCL. So it's always the dollar sign. Gary Fan. They have all exceeded 1 minute, including Q&A. I think you should give us at least 2 minutes, because every member has been using more than 1 minute. It's the second round, not the third or the fourth rounds of questions. Why can't you give us 2 minutes? Mr. Wu Chiwai. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, the MTRCL will be very mean. They have the monthly pass extra, and then they have the early bird discount. But then by having the City Saver, you won't link it with the early bird. It appears that for the urban commuters, it seems that you regard them having a different traveling pattern from that of the New Territories commuters. Why can't you have them together? And then for Kwun Tong, Tsuen Wan, we have got the traditional industrial districts. Are you saying that people don't go to work between 7:15 and 8:15? Why can't you allow the workers to make use of your City Saver and go to work earlier? Monsieur, why some stations are not included? We want to resolve the problem of morning congestion. Are you saying that it's not busy at the in the industrial districts, depending on the starting stations and the destination stations? We have identified 29 stations. We want to resolve the problem of morning peak. Yes, please go back to reconsider the matter. Michael Tian, just now the DS talked about the variable pay and the performance pay. It is said it has been implemented. Please tell us in greater details. And then MTRCL, you want the schemes to succeed. You must make sure that it will succeed. So between 7:15 and 8:15, please provide a monthly pass for people exiting at those during that period of time. You have the other concession schemes, but then for the non-peak exit concession, please consider the idea. Mr. Yes, we'll try to see what can be done to the monthly passes. If you can't think of an idea, please approach me. I have some ideas. Is it okay for them to come and explain about the variable pay? Yes. Of course, the three of them try to come up with something as complicated as possible that will safeguard your interests, so you are not benefiting the commuters. You want to make it as complicated as possible. In fact, the worst thing about the FAM is that for the penalties to be paid for the disruption of service, you regard it as a concession as well. So I want to know whether the penalties can be separated from the fare concessions so that Kwan, Tong, Tai Po, Kwan stations, as such stations, the commuters can be compensated. So have you ever considered taking out the penalties? Ms. Young, yes, we did. How are you going to do it? And have you rejected the idea? It's a technical point. If you talk about giving out the tickets, it will be very confusing. No. You still have to arrange for their evacuation. So technically, it can be done. We have arranged for non-deduction of fares. So this is the first sort of concession. But they have suffered losses. They have already suffered from the prolonged journey.
Just then, Gary Fang moved two temporary motions. One is to urge MTRC to consider extending the morning peak hour concessions to evening. That's one. The other one is to increase the stations beyond the 29 proposed that are covered by the promotions. Just then I read to you the content of the two motions. And now, to save time, because we have another item coming up, I want to, on the first motion, that is offering concessions in the evening. Let's take a vote. Those in favor of extending the concessions to the evening, please raise your hands. Okay, we'll record the name of the voters. Okay, 5 minutes for voting. I'm dealing with the first motion. Can you circulate to us the motion? Can you just raise your hands to save time? So the first motion is to extend morning peak hour concessions to the evening. Those in support of the motion, please raise your hands. We will put on the names of those who voted in favor. Moon Shiping Wu Chi Wai, Gary Fan, Chen Wan Yu, Wang Ko-heng, Michael Tian, and James Toh. Those opposed? No, none. So we approve this motion. And the next motion is concerning the 29 stations given concessions in the morning. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. Yes. The motion is to extend the number of stations to all. Yeah, Gary. Okay, no, I just want them to extend the number of or expand the number of stations covered, but not necessarily all. Gary, if you don't have a concrete proposal, then even if we pass this motion, is not of much use. So you want to see more than 29 stations covered, right? By the concessions, yes. You can move another motion, or you can support this motion, but whether the MTRC acts is up to them. So we'll see how the MTRC reacts. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, those who are present endorse this motion. All members present endorse this motion. No opposition. Okay, one more. Gary Fan has propose another motion that the panel objects to fare increases by MTLC in 2014. I will not accept this motion because we've just approved 2 motions, which in principle means that we are accepting the fare increase. Please don't argue with me, but my motion means that why there are so many members to criticize the fare adjustment mechanism, because we were dissatisfied. We want to show that we do not support the mechanism. Albert Chan has another motion proposed. The concessional schemes offered by the MTLC cannot provide real benefits to the public. The panel urges MTLC to review its concessional scheme to ensure that the public can enjoy real benefits. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Monsieur Ping Fan, Gary Fan, Evan Chen, James Tong, Wong Kok Heng. Those who oppose the motion? No opposition. Okay. I'm sure you've heard members' views. But Chan has also moved another motion. That's the panel objects to fare increases by MTLC. It's the same as the motion moved by Gary Fang. I will not deal with that. But the panel never agreed with the fare increases. Well, we've passed several motions, but those motions are related to the fare increases. Let's stop arguing here. Chairman, you've distorted and misled the public. The panel never supported fare increases by MTLC. You were actually imposing your views on us. We never approved fare increases. Even if they don't increase the fares, we can ask for concessions. I think all the members that have spoken held the view that the company should not increase fares when it's got so much profits. I'm sure the MTLC heard what you said. But the concessions are something to be considered together with the fare increase. I don't think so. I don't think so, Chairman. I was asking that, the penalty, actually the penalty incurred on the MTLC because of delay caused by incidents, they actually incorporate that into their fare concession scheme. I agree. Well, okay, right. I think that I can make concessions myself. But anyway, our motions have no legal binding effect. Now let's look at the 2 motions then. Albert Chan's motion, which is simpler. The panel objects to MTLC's fare increases. Those in favor, please raise your hands. 5 members supported it. So you heard it. Now let's deal with the next item. Any member opposed? No? Okay, to the previous motion. Okay. Right. Next item. I have 4th and 5th motions. You've only dealt with 3 of my 5 motions. I move 5 motions. You have 1 motion that objects to the fare increase in 2014. There's another motion on review of the mechanism, fare adjustment mechanism. We urge the government to review and amend the fare adjustment mechanism. I wrote it. I remember it. Members, I hope that please do not just, for panels. It's really, don't just keep giving me motions because it's meaningless for motions to do this, because for the fare adjustments of MTLCs and other public transportations, you need to be better prepared and don't just hand in motions at the last minute. But, Chairman, this is our basic rights and responsibility to move motions. How come you're saying that we would disrupt the order of the meeting by submitting motions? I have my right, in accordance with the rules of procedures, to move motions. Chairman, yes, you can't just state your views and not give us a chance to tell you my views. We have our rules of procedures. We're entitled to expressing our views here. You can't have all the say here. No, we don't do it that way. So this motion says the panel urges the government to again review and amend the fair adjustment mechanism. Those in favor, please raise your hands. 5. Those who oppose? None. Okay, so the administration can take on board the views.
邊個第5個啊？
你使唔使我再講多次啊？
There's the 5th motion. That is, there's one motion on city safer, there's a motion on the morning concessions, there's also one motion on adjusting the, amending the fair adjustment mechanism. You haven't dealt with my 5th motion. We've done your motion on having concessions in the evening, but you haven't dealt with my last motion urging the administration to review and amend the fair adjustment mechanism. We've done that. We've just done that. Have you dealt with our motions opposing fair increase? Well, your 2 motions are the same with Albert Chan, so we've dealt with that already. Members, at panel meetings, please don't use this, approach. Don't try to filibuster to waste time.
好處㗎。
呢個係你嘅責。
Your responsibility is a responsibility to read our motions. Your responsibility to chair meetings to read out the motions. Otherwise, give me the chance to read out the motions, or put it on public display. I've read your motions already. Please listen to the records. You haven't read out the motions. Gary Fang. Many members heard what I just said. If you insist on behaving like this, I would rule that your behavior is improper, and I will expel you from this room. You haven't read the motions. I read out your motions. I said your motion was basically the same as that of Albert Chan. That's why I dealt with 2 of your motions together. Okay, I'd like to thank all the administration representatives and others who were present. Let's move on to the next item. Franchises of City Bus Limited, franchise for Hong Kong Island and Cross Harbour Bus Network, and New Lantau Bus Company. Those attending the meeting today, for this item is Mr. Yao Xingmu, Under-Secretary for Transport and Housing, Andy Chen Shui-Fu, Under-Secretary for Transport and Housing, and Principal Assistant Secretary, Ms. Carrie Chang. And also with us is Ms. Dong Feng-Ping, Deputy Commissioner for Transport Services and Management, Assistant Commissioner Mr. Masala Lee, Shui Chen, and Principal Transport Officer Ms. Reginald Chen. Welcome all. Under-Secretary, when you're ready, please take us through the paper. Thank you, Chairman. The City Bus Limited is franchise for Hong Kong Island and Cross Harbour Bus Network. And the New Lantau Bus Company's franchising right will expire on July 1st, 2006, and will actually expire in the years to come. And if we cannot provide reliable and efficient services, then according to the law, we can consider and extend or offer 10-year franchises for operators which provide good services, reliable and efficient services. All along, the two companies have provided services that are reliable and efficient, and both companies have expressed their desire to apply for the 10-year franchising right, and they also have agreed to continue to invest and enhance the services. Therefore, the government plans to consider granting or extending a bus franchise to the two companies. And the new franchising agreement will come into effect after the existing franchise expires to ensure that the existing services and the public will not be affected. The discussions on granting or extending the bus franchise has since the 90s been applied to companies with good performances. Now that the operating costs are increasing and there's the competition from rail transport and other forms of public transportation, we can see that in the foreseeable future, operation of these bus routes would continue to be difficult. We will be pragmatic and try to get the best terms of the franchises for the public. And we also strive to ensure that bus services are enhanced and ensure that the buses are environmental friendly. We will not underestimate difficulties of negotiations with the bus companies, but we would take into account the actual operating environment. Today's meeting, we will listen to the views of the bus companies and what members think on the terms of our franchise. We hope that by next year, early next year, we can finish the negotiations with the bus companies. As for the stipulations in the new franchises, we will consult the Transport Advisory Committee, and by the end of this year till middle of September, we will invite the public to make submissions. All the information concerned will be uploaded to the Transport Bureau and other related websites. We'll also invite the Transport Advisory Committee to express the views to us. And by July 2017, the expiry date of the franchise will actually appear, and because of the different expiry dates of the two franchises, we will at the appropriate time be prepared for negotiations. Hopefully, by the middle of next year, we can report to LegCo on the latest of our negotiations. And we're here to listen to members' views on the franchise matters.
黃國興、陳偉業、范國威議員。
Three members have raised their hands to ask questions. Wong Kok Hing, Chen Wei-Yip, Wu Chi-wai, 4 minutes each. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When the administration is to talk to the city bus concerning the franchise, I hope the viewpoints will be followed up, and I expect improvements as well. First of all, about the lost trips. For the problem of lost trips or lack of punctuality, I think has always been of great concern to the passengers. Now, the new franchise will have a period of as much as 10 years. I just wondered if the administration can urge the operators to do the following. That is to provide display boards, electronic display boards at the bus stops so as to indicate the expected arrival time of the next bus. This can serve the purpose of attracting passengers, and this can also facilitate monitoring. And I think this can sort of tie in with the electronic records. I think we can sort of match the electronic display boards on board of a bus with that of the electronic display at the bus stops. In the past, bus companies will rely on temporary workers and contract workers to replace bus drivers. If we have more and more temporary workers so that we don't have many regular bus drivers, then it will not be good for the safety of the staff as well as the passengers. So it is important to have a greater proportion of the staff being permanent staff. And then for the cross-tunnel buses, I'm afraid that after crossing the tunnel, the bus fare charge doesn't correspond to the distance traveled. In other words, it attracts a higher fare. By reducing the fare, I think we can make greater use of the spare capacity, and this will benefit both the company as well as the passengers. I don't know why this is not being done. I think the administration is trying to show bias to the rail operator, because the administration doesn't allow the bus company to provide a lower fare after crossing the tunnel. Mr. Wong has 3 questions. We are concerned about the stability of bus service. For City Bus Franchise 1 and NLB, for the lost trip rate, please focus on City Bus. I'm not interested in NLB because I am a member representing Hong Kong Island. For City Bus, the lost trip rate was 1.8%, lower than the overall industry average of 3.4%. But for your point, certainly it will be taken in account in our negotiation. Your second concern is about the proportion of permanent staff. We will note this down for our reference. It will be useful. For the third point, I know you have raised this for a number of times. For the cross-tunnel service, cross-harbour service, is relatively of a longer distance. It may not benefit the harbour crossing passengers if we take on your idea. For the interchange, I hope there will be a policy decision so that all the bus companies will provide free of charge bus interchange at specified places. Now, you are negotiating a new franchise. This must be a condition. Now, if we are talking about the same distance or the same fares, then the interchange should be available free of charge. For the NLB, it's more for tourists than the general public. After declare interest, I always take the NLB, and I've written the greatest number of complaint letters to the NLB. For people going to work, they can't get on board midway, and it's difficult to get on a bus on Saturdays and Sundays. The NLB is focused on serving the tourists going to the Big Buddha. So they are doing this at the expense of the commuting public. They doesn't observe the stops, and then we have been complaining, but then the TD is very poor in its monitoring job. For bus interchange, Undersecretary, can you not sort of provide this as a condition of this franchise? I'm going to move a motion. For the bus interchange concession, when we negotiate with the operators, this will certainly be part of the discussion. Not as part of the discussion, you have to recognize this as a government policy and make it a condition of the franchise. It was observed in the past but not sustained. For the bus interchange, this is the broad policy direction of the government. As to how it is implemented, we have to take it up with the bus operators. The NLB, maybe the TD can comment on the monitoring. Would I like to take up this question? Yes, please. For the NLB, for the performance of the NLB, we have been monitoring closely. We agree with what Mr. Chen has said. That is, for the weekend service, the NLB has a very huge demand there's a huge demand for NLB service because many visitors go to Lantau for sightseeing. We have looked at the operational returns from the bus company. We have also paid such visits, and we have found that for certain sections of the service, there is a very strong demand, and we have asked the bus operator to run short trips to enhance the service so that it will facilitate commuters boarding the trip midway. So we have been in liaison with the bus operators concerning this matter. We've been watching the demand. Summer holiday is around the corner, so we expect an increase in demand. We are not going to relax our monitoring work. The admin regards it as something simple. You are working from your air-conditioned office, but many grassroots workers have their pay deducted for being late, or they even get sacked. So make sure that you will pay attention to those poor people who live on the Lantau and have to get on a bus middle of the trip, middle of the bus service. Now Lantau used to be a good place to live in, but then as a result of the difficulty to get onto the bus, it has now become a very difficult, a very bad place to live in. Gary Fan, I think there is a loophole. So it seems that you are helping the bus company to disguise their lost trips. So paragraph 6A, it is said that for city bus, the annual average lost trip rate was 1.8%. How did you arrive at such a figure? Did you follow the previous monitoring mechanism? I hope you understand that for the city bus and the NLB, they are trying to get another 10 years franchise. It is a very important issue. If we base our discussion on an inaccurate basis, then we will not be able to perform our duties. It is also unfair to the bus companies. So for the mechanism to monitor the lost trips, what is the progress? And then again, as in paragraph 6, it's 1.8% concerning the average lost trip. But then for city bus, it is said that for Hong Kong Island, for a corresponding period, the lost trip rate was as much as 2.6%. That is, they have the highest lost trip rate since 2006. So coming second to 2.8% of KMB. What has been done to improve the lost trip rate? Under Secretary for the monitoring, maybe the department can give an explanation. As to the Ombudsman's recommendation, the TD has already started a study expected to be completed in summer this year, and will come back to the LegCo. Maybe the TD can explain the data. I want to take this opportunity to answer Mr. Fan's question. For the lost trip rate, for the calculation, what we did is that we have the actual trips planned per day. We compare that with the actual trips made. When it is not reached, then the number will be added together to form the basis for the calculation of the lost trips. The Ombudsman has already given us some recommendations. Sorry, I've only got 20 seconds left. In other words, you are following the original mechanism to arrive at the lost trip rate. This is the mechanism we've been using all the time. For the Ombudsman's recommendation, we are talking to the bus companies to see if we can sort of look at it according to different time periods. And the Undersecretary has mentioned that in the second half of the year, we'll come back to the LegCo about the progress. Mr. Fan, any follow-up? No? Mr. Poon. Mr. Chairman, extending the franchise or granting a new franchise, I think our greatest concern is the performance of the bus companies, and we're also concerned about the safety records. Let me go back to the paper. Page 5 of the Chinese version, and that's about safety and service enhancement measures for both companies. They've told us that certain measures have been taken to enhance safety. It is said that in the fourth quarter of 2012, they will fully implement a new set of working hour and rest time arrangements for the bus captains. And it says that the bus captains will have longer rest time when they are on duty. What is meant by longer rest time? What is the current arrangement? And what about the details of implementation? And then they have their driving attitude and safety awareness being enhanced by providing enhancement, refresher, remedial training courses on safe driving. Is it mandatory, and what is the frequency of the courses? Please provide the information.
As for the requirement for bus captains aged 50 years or above to undergo annual health checks, and those aged 60 or more have to undergo an electrocardiogram, I'd like to ask you about the pass rates and your arrangements for health checks. If a driver fails a health test, would the two bus companies transfer the drivers to do clerical work instead? Mr. Law? Or Ms. Law? Yeah, in response to your questions on to hours of work for the bus drivers, we do have guidelines for their hours of work. That's a driver after working for 6 hours will need to rest for half an hour. And during that 6 hours of work, there should be a 20-minute break. Another guideline is that the total hours of work a day should not exceed 14 hours. And thirdly, the driving hours should not exceed 11 hours. That's excluding the half an hour rest. And the rest time should, between 2 working days, should not be less than 10 hours. And for every 8 hours, there should be an hour of meal break. We also carry out surveys on whether bus companies complied with the guidelines or not. Our survey results show that bus companies do actually comply almost 100% with the guidelines. As for your second question on health checks, drivers who are above the age of 60 will need to have an electrocardiogram. In November 2012, we tightened the requirement, and we've asked the bus companies to ask drivers aged above 50 and to undergo electrocardiograms. That is, at the age of 54, 57, they will need to do that. And if the bus drivers have some diseases, like they had a history of a stroke or diabetes or high blood pressure, and if they need to be on medication, in other words, they would need to undergo an electrocardiogram as well. And bus companies actually respond positively to our requirement and have implemented the new guidelines. Okay, members, I want to I need to talk about the NLB services. I can see that during peak hours, particularly on Saturdays and Sundays, when there's a large number of tourists going there, often the NLB could not cope with the load of passengers. When I visited Tai O once, I heard from many Tai O residents that when they want to go out at weekends, the NLB bus services actually could not meet their needs. And people have to wait for a long time to get on the bus. At the same time, I can see that NLB actually takes on a lot of tour groups. So therefore, at weekends, I don't know how to deploy the bus fleet. I don't know whether the Transport Department has looked into this. Whether at weekends, particularly during the tourism peak period, does the NLB meet the need for public transportation first? Or does it actually put more focus or resources on taking on tourists? Have you looked into the situation? If you haven't, you have to know that passengers on Lantau Island, because of this particular arrangement, actually are losing out. Has the Transport Department carried out any study? Have you tried to find out the bus fleet of NLB? Is it devoted to meeting the needs, the transportation needs of people living on Lantau Island, particularly at weekends? Ms. Law? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members, for your questions. As I said in my reply to the previous question, we did take note of the services provided by NLB. We understand that one characteristic of its services is that at weekends, the demand for its services will be higher. And because of that, it tried to meet needs and have to deploy its bus fleet. Apart from its own fleet, indeed, during the peak hours at weekends, busy periods, it will ask other non-franchise buses to provide services. And this helps actually allow for more healthy provision of services on Lantau and enabled NLB to survive. Of course, whether it's local residents or tourists, NLB is obliged to provide good services to them. As I said earlier, Chairman, can I ask the Transport Department can provide the information I asked for, whether NLB is really do what it's supposed to do? And also, during your negotiations with them on the extension of the franchise, has the Transport Department considered, 10-year franchise is a very long time. Have you considered actually put the franchise out to public tender so that we can find or try to get the best benefits for the public? Ms. Law, as I said, we do monitor bus companies. Let me give you some figure. During peak hours, like Route 11 to Tai O, on the rate, the passenger make up 80% of the capacity. Wilwar and Tai O also reach 80% of the patronage rate. And NLB has the possibility to get the buses to provide short trips to actually pick up passengers. Next one. Thank you. As for the requirement for bus companies to renew their franchises, you said the consultation period ends by the end of September, but the franchise will expire by 2017. So what's your timetable like? After the end of the public consultation, when will the government make a decision and inform the bus companies of its decision? And secondly, members talk about the issue on Lantau. Of course, I'm very familiar with the situation there. I don't know how you come to the 80% patronage rate. At weekends in Tai O, around 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from Tai O to Tong, you have to wait even from 45 minutes to 1.5 hours to get on the bus. I don't think your 80% patronage rate doesn't reflect the situation. And also I want to find out about the relationship between NLB and Kwun Chung bus. Kowloon bus is a member. Kwun Chung and NLB give people the impression that through the franchises, they have explored or expanded the tourism services of Kunchong. There's also the saying that the old coaches were bought by NLB, something to do with the assets, transfer of assets. But just then the commissioner said that NLB uses other buses to meet the need during the peak period. Is that the old buses that they're using? Mr. Yao, the negotiation on the franchises. City bus franchise expires on June 1st, 2016. So according to our timetable, by early next year, if we finish our negotiation, then the city bus will have only 1 year left to prepare for the new franchise. So the schedule is quite tight. As for NLB, its franchise expires on March 1st, 2017. So he has a bit more time. So we're going to have the discussions or engagements with both companies around the same time. And after we're done with the discussions, we'll report to RegCo. And if the negotiations are successful, both companies will make preparations for the new franchises. So for the other questions, I'll hand over the time to the Commissioner. Yes, as for members' point about non-franchised buses operating at weekends and during peak hours on Lantau Island, I think this has been a long-term arrangement. This is to help bus companies spare bus companies the need to actually keep a large bus fleet during normal days or weekdays. As you know, at weekdays in Lantau, relatively traffic will be less busy, much less busy, and the demand for traffic will be much higher at weekends, and traffic will be busiest then. So bus companies have to consider how to, control the costs as well. And so bus companies have to find ways to cope with the financial pressure. So during peak periods, it asks other buses or has arranged for other buses to provide the services at weekends so that the company can be in a healthy financial state. So all members who wanted to ask questions have asked. Last one, Albert Chen. I just want to point out that just then, the views expressed by Deputy Commissioner that from Tai O to Tung Chung, there's the 80% for that trip, for that journey. That's the average. But for Mui Wo, the patronage rate is 50%. It seems like it gives the impression that there are few people going to Mui Wo or taking that route. But you have to understand the travel pattern of passengers. Tung Chung, I came here this morning from Tung Chung to Mui Wo, to the pier. Very few people take the route in the morning. But when people go from Mui Wo to Tung Chung, often there is lost trips, and many people going to Tung Chung or students going to Tung Chung, they could not get on the bus. So your average of 50% is meaningless. You have to look at the actual demand during the peak hours. If you look at the average for both trips or round trips, that's meaningless because the actual reality is that on certain trips there are very few people, but then on other trips there are many passengers waiting to get on the bus. So you can't just tell the overall average and to say that it seems like no problem exists, but indeed you have to look at the overall situation. Okay, so I will extend the meeting by 10 minutes. Next one, Yik Chiming, 4 minutes. I've heard views from various members on NLB. In the report submitted by the government, your survey found that response to the response of users, the satisfaction rate of the users of NLB services are quite good. I was involved in public transportation myself. I think for the situation in Lantau, it is quite a difficult operating environment because passengers numbers is limited. But I hope that the Bureau can help in one thing. I try to wait. You have to wait for a long time at weekends on Lantau. I hope that this can be improved. I know if you just deploy a lot of buses at weekends, then how can the company operate? Bus fares may have to rise if that's the case. So I don't know what you can do, but I hope that the Bureau can discuss with the bus company over this. But I don't see why, both companies, particular NLB, you have such negative views of NLB. Why? I don't get that impression from reports that I've read. Mr. Yao, I think we are aware of the situation mentioned by members that at weekends the demand is great for bus services on Lantau. Therefore, in a negotiation with NLB, we will ask the company to improve its weekend services. Our paper also mentions that from 2014 to 2018, NLB is going to buy 15 more new buses, making up 50% of its fleet to replace the old ones and further improve its services. Therefore, the company does have the wish and is in a position to provide satisfactory services to the public. And therefore, we would directly engage with the bus company, and we think that inviting public tenders may not be the best way forward. As for monitoring of services, we will continue to listen to members' views and further discuss with the company on the quality of services. So there are two motions that need to be dealt with.
First of all, it is from Mr. Albert Chen. That is, this panel opposes the granting of a franchise to the new Lantau bus company for the next 10 years. Those who are in favor, please raise your hands. 3. Those who are against, please raise your hands. 5. So the question has been negatived. Another motion, also from Mr. Albert Chen. This panel urges the government to consider the following while granting a new franchise to any bus company. That is, the relevant bus company must, at specified bus stops, provide bus interchange concession in relation to service bearing the same bus fare. Those who are in favor, 4. Those who are against, please raise your hands. 3. I think the question has been approved. So I hope that the administration and the relevant departments note our ideas. Meeting adjourned because we haven't got other items to deal with. Date of next meeting, 18th of July at 10:45. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.